Welcome back to Rockers to Doctors. In part one, we survived the hotel floods, the whiskey jacuzzis, and the bat incidents. Now it's time for something even more shocking. Clarity. This is part two, where the wildest names in rock stop spiraling and start rising.
Let's start with the poster boy of rock stars becoming recovery dinosaurs, Alice Cooper. His recovery from addiction is one of the most remarkable and enduring sobriety stories in rock history, partially because he's maintained it for over 4 decades.
By the mid-1970s, Cooper had become notorious for his alcohol consumption, which was almost as famous as his stage guillotines and fake blood. During the height of his fame, around the time of $1 Million Babies and Welcome to My Nightmare, Cooper was consuming up to 2 cases of beer a day.
I used to drink a case of Koch's Golden Anniversary beer every night.
So half of what Alice drank.
Yep.
Cooper said, "I got to the point where I was drinking with Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix, and they died. I got out alive. That tells me I was saved for something."
In 1977, Cooper's body finally gave out and he began vomiting blood. He was admitted to a New York sanitarium. In 1978, his concept album, From the Inside, chronicles that hospital stay. Sadly, by the early 1980s, he relapsed, substituting cocaine for alcohol for a while. For some, relapse is part of the recovery process. For some, it's death.
Cooper later said that his blackout years around 1980 to 1982 were so bad that he didn't even remember making albums Zipper Catches Skin and Dada.
In 1983, Cooper checked into rehab again, this time in Arizona, and he has remained completely sober since. He has said, "Getting sober was the easiest thing I ever did. Staying sober was the hardest, but I love the challenge."
He calls his sobriety his second life, and he says it's made him a better husband, father, and performer.
He never attended AA formally, but describes himself as having a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening, leaning heavily on his Christian faith.
Since then, Cooper has become a hyper-vigilant advocate for recovery. He's mentored younger musicians like Dave Mustaine and Nikki Sixx, who also struggled with addiction.
Cooper assures, "The greatest high you can have is being completely sober and walking out on stage." That's totally true. Playing sober is so much more fulfilling than trying to keep rhythm while tripping on shrooms.
He was living after midnight, and he was rocking until dawn. Motorcycles, leather, vats of alcohol, silos of coke, gunshots, fights, and social struggles with sexual identity. Rob Halford was a warrior of chaos.
Halford's struggles with alcohol and drugs began during Judas Priest's rise to global fame in the late 1970s and exploded through the 1980s. During that time, he got addicted to everything. He later said the substances were partially a way to numb his pain over being closeted at the time.
In an interview, Halford stated, "I was terrified of being outed. I buried myself in drugs and booze to kill the fear."
By the early 1980s, Halford's addiction had nearly killed him. He suffered a near-fatal overdose on pills and painkillers in 1992 after a night of drinking. He later explained, "I woke up in a hospital and I realized I was either going to die or I'd get clean. I chose to live."
This incident forced him to confront his addiction directly. Halford checked himself into rehab in early 1992, got clean, and has been sober ever since. He has said the moment he surrendered, admitting he was powerless over addiction was the most liberating thing he'd ever done. He often credits 12-step programs and faith for his recovery.
After getting clean, Halford found renewed energy and clarity that transformed his career. His post-rehab albums, Resurrection, Angel of Retribution, and Firepower, show a rejuvenated artist. He's more passionate and emotionally open.
He said sobriety gave him back his voice, literally and metaphorically. Today, Halford remains a committed advocate for mental health and recovery, reminding fans that addiction doesn't discriminate.
Halford describes himself as a deeply spiritual, though not strictly religious, and believes that his sobriety is a daily spiritual practice. He often begins the day with prayer or reflection. He avoids bars and parties, but says he can be around alcohol without temptation. He focuses on gratitude, discipline, and connection, qualities he once drowned in alcohol.
So, what happened to Slash? He's still alive, so clearly he survived heroin addiction and heart complications due to his alcoholism.
By the mid 2000s, his life and marriage were falling apart. His wife, Perla Hudson, staged an intervention. Slash entered rehab in 2006, and that's when everything finally stuck. He's been sober since 2006. He hasn't relapsed since.
Slash has spoken very openly about working a 12-step program. So much for the anonymous part. He has a sponsor and avoids situations that trigger his old habits. He quit smoking as well, which he says was almost harder than quitting drugs.
What wisdom did Slash obtain? He said, I realized I didn't need heroin to be creative. I just needed a guitar and peace of mind.
Also, he stated, when you're clean, you realize how small your world was when you were high. Now, his is infinite.
He often speaks about the illusion of creativity in drugs, warning that being high doesn't make you play better. It just makes you forget what you played.
Sobriety didn't dull Slash's edge, it amplified it. After getting clean, he formed Velvet Revolver, then launched a successful solo career and even reunited with Guns N' Roses.
Slash's heart condition, it eventually healed. His doctor said that his recovery was miraculous. His story has inspired countless fans and musicians battling their own addictions.
Ozzy Osbourne's recovery from addiction is one of the longest, most chaotic, and ultimately most hard-won battles in rock history. It's a saga that spans 5 decades of substance abuse, multiple near-death experiences, and a final reckoning that forced him to find clarity in his later years.
In those later years of his addictions, he pissed on the Alamo, he pissed off PETA, attacked Sharon in a blackout. All of this happened during those years. He was arrested multiple times, hospitalized repeatedly, and was teetering on the edge of death.
Throughout the 90s, Ozzy tried rehab multiple times. He'd get sober for a while, then relapse on tour. I've been dead lucky, he said. I should have been dead 1,000 times.
In 2003, after a near fatal quad bike accident, he became dependent on opioid painkillers, reigniting his addiction. Sharon said later that his prescription drug addiction was even more insidious than his earlier drinking years.
In the early 2010s, Ozzy committed fully to sobriety, working 12 steps with a sponsor and attending AA meetings regularly.
As with many recovering addicts, he became active in the recovery community and speaks with honesty about addiction's persistence. He's vocal about mental health, saying depression and anxiety fueled much of his addiction.
Ozzy's words of wisdom to those in recovery and facing their true demons for the first time. Being sober doesn't make life easy. It just makes it possible.
Nikki Sixx's recovery from addiction is one of the most intense and well-documented journeys in rock history, a story that goes from literal death to long-term sobriety, and ultimately to becoming one of rock's most outspoken advocates for recovery and mental health.
By 1989, Motley Crue were touring behind Dr. Feelgood, which ironically was their first sober album. It took heavy intervention to get him there.
Management, the label, and the band forced Sixx into rehab after multiple relapses. After several rehabs in 1989, Sixx began his first serious recovery. Dr. Feelgood became a symbol of that new beginning, the first Motley Crue album recorded sober.
Sixx began journaling his thoughts, documenting the chaos of his addiction and recovery, and those writings later became the Heroin Diaries.
In the mid-1990s, he suffered a few brief relapses. He later said that these were helpful. They helped him realize that he could never drink or use again in any amount. He'd been fully sober since July 2nd, 2004, a date he calls his real birthday.
As with the rest, he worked the 12 steps, found a sponsor, and became actively involved in recovery circles. He remarried, became a father again, and completely restructured his life around stability and a sense of purpose.
He said, I don't crave drugs anymore. I crave life. I crave connection. Sobriety gave me that.
Sixx co-founded Running Wild in the Night, a charity that supports youth addiction recovery and mental health programs. He's become one of the most outspoken advocates in rock for addiction awareness, recovery, and destigmatization.
As of 2025, Six has over 20 years of sobriety. All right, let's do what we did earlier, but this time we'll kick off the struck sober lightning round, beginning with
Eric Clapton, the man behind cocaine, sober since 1987. In sobriety, he founded the Crossword Center, a rehab facility in Antigua to help others struggling with addiction.
Elton John's song I'm Still Standing borrows heavily from his perspective after coming out of rehab. Elton has been sober since the early 1990s, roughly 30 years. Since then, he's become the voice of recovery for many. Sobriety made him more selfless. Case in point, the Elton John AIDS Foundation. And in terms of anonymity, well, he's kind of like, whatever. People magazine reports that he has AA meetings in his house every Sunday, and he even attends Zoom AA meetings.
James Hetfield, master of Alcoholica, entered rehab for the first time in 2001. He said, I had to strip away everything, the band, the bottle, the walls I'd built around myself, and just start over. He began therapy, starting the 12 steps, and reconnected with his faith. You can see all of this in Metallica, Some Kind of Monster. He remained sober for almost 2 decades, but he relapsed in 2019. The band canceled shows while he re-entered rehab. He's all good now and often talking about replacing self-pity with gratitude.
Dave Mustaine. By the late 1990s, he'd gone to rehab 17 times and relapsed every single time. He overdosed and suffered nerve damage in his arms so severe doctors warned he might never play guitar again. From 2002 onward, Mustaine's embraced a faith-based recovery approach. He begins each day with reflection and prayer, viewing recovery as maintenance of the soul.
So, yeah, this is supposed to be a lightning round, right, Dorian?
Yeah.
Well, this really isn't lightning at all. It's drizzle. Let's speed it up.
Okay, Rick Bird, guitars for Joan Jett, sober 36 years.
Ronnie Wood, Rolling Stones guitarist, sober for 15 years.
Corey Taylor, frontman of Slipknot and Stone Sour, sober 16 years.
Steven Stills, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, sober 3 years.
Richie Sambora, Bon Jovi guitarist, sober since 2011, according to most sources.
Derek Webley, sober for 11 years.
Billy Strings, last drink, June 2016.
Zach Wilde, sober for 18 years or more. Who knows the exact number?
Mike Portnoy, can't find the exact years, but he's spoken publicly about how the 12 steps have saved his life. He even wrote the 12-step suite based on his AA experience.
Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, sober for 30 years.
Rudy Sarzo, sober too.
And the list goes on. Comment with anyone that we missed. We would like to recognize them. Well, that's our journey from chaos to clarity, from leather and limos to therapy sessions and sober stages. We've seen the parties, the excess, the hospital visits, the near-death moments, and most importantly, the recoveries that followed.
Yeah, what's wild is realizing that the same people who once seemed unstoppable in their destruction, the ones who made us cringe, gasp, and sometimes laugh at their insanity, are the same people who found a way back to life. And not just back, but forward with purpose.
Sobriety doesn't erase the past, it reframes it. The broken hotel rooms, the overdoses, the all-nighters, they became reminders, proof that you can survive the chaos, that it's possible to turn self-destruction into self-mastery.
And for every fan watching this, there's a little lesson buried in the rock and roll rubble. You're never too far gone to start over. Whether you've battled addiction, depression, or just life's daily chaos, it's never too late to find your clarity, your rhythm, your second life.
So, next time you crank up Kickstart My Heart or Paranoid, remember, behind every legendary riff, there's a story of survival. Behind every power chord, there's somebody who refused to quit and choose life over the bottle. the line, or the pill.
Rockers may be human, but the recovery's legendary.
Thanks for joining us on Rockers to Doctors. Keep your headphones loud, your heart open, and your second chances close. Rock on, sober or not.
And remember, it's not just the music that heals, it's the story behind it.
Until next time, stay loud, stay alive, and most of all, stay conscious.
Rock and roll all night and live to tell the tale. Check us out at rockerstodoctors.com, Instagram, TikTok, and Amazon Music. Hey, addiction and creativity often go hand in hand. So there's a real problem with addiction in the artist and music world. We've posted some useful information down in the chat, in the comments, and also on our website. Any resources that'll help you with recovery. If you know someone in addiction or if you are struggling with addictions, please check that stuff out.